This is my biomechanics term project. Basically what it's going to be on is increasing strength and avoiding injury while bench pressing. Bench pressing is a very technical movement, and I know for myself and a lot of people it's very hard to increase the weight on the lift itself. So using proper form is going to be essential to avoiding injury and increasing the weight on your bench. This here is a failed attempt at 285 pounds. The main thing I want to focus on in this video is when I reach the point where I can't push it up any further. Instead of pushing the bar back to the position of rotation where it's easiest to hold, I push it straight upwards and flare out my elbows. So I'll talk about this later of why this is making the lift more difficult for myself. Here we have a properly executed bench press. Some main areas of focus are bar path, elbow tuck, leg drive, and arch. These areas are a key focus in avoiding injury and increasing strength. When benching, whether with barbells or dumbbells, there will be a force vector in each hand as shown. This is caused by the force of the weight in your hands. The force of this weight is pulling down, so you need a muscle which pulls up and opposes the downward force of the weight. Now, there is no muscle that lines up perfectly to oppose the downward force of the weight, but the pectoralis major is pretty close as it attaches to the clavicle and sternum. In this exercise, the pecs will be known as the synergist movers, as they create a movement of horizontal adduction in the horizontal plane. So any muscle opposite to the synergist movers will be either shut off through reciprocal inhibition or will be used to stabilize the joint throughout the motion. These muscles will be labeled antagonists or stabilizers. So basically the difficulty of this movement varies and can be broken down into 3 stages. The first stage being at the bottom of the range of motion, the upper arm creates a perpendicular line between the axes of the shoulder and the force line. Here, force causes a lot of rotation and torque about the shoulder axes, making it more difficult. So as the bars press upwards, we near the second stage of the movement. The moment going from the axes of the shoulder to the force vector has gotten much smaller and is practically divided in half. Therefore, there will be half the compression on the joint than there was before, and now half the rotation on the joint. Stage 3 occurs at the top of the movement, and the force vector is going right through the joint. Therefore, there is virtually no movement arm and no rotation is created. All the force is applied to the compression at the joint. So we now know from this that as you press the bar, the line created between the shoulder axes and the force line gradually decreases. As this decreases, the rotation and torque also decreases. In this clip here, you can see that I have no arch in my back and little to no leg drive. Arching your back will allow you to drop your shoulders down, moving them closer to the path of the bar and thus the vector forces. Through arching, you are also able to decrease the distance from the point of rotation, your shoulders, to the point where the bar touches your chest. The shorter range of motion will lead to less rotation, less tension, and less risk of injury on your shoulder. Here is one way to set up your arch for benching. Notice how I retract my scapula and wiggle around on the bench to ensure everything is secure. Your back will act as a stabilizer in this movement. Similarly to not arching, having poor bar path can put your shoulders at a high risk for injury. In this clip, you can see that the bar is touching way lower on my chest than where it should be. Bar path will be different for everyone, but lowering the bar too low or too high in your chest can cause your elbows to excessively tuck or flare, respectively. Excessively flaring elbows can cause the space between the AC joint and the humerus to narrow and possibly trap or impinge the rotator cuff tendon. This should be avoided as it can cause pain and serious injury. Here we have a clip of proper form. Notice that my back is arched, elbows are not flared but not too tucked, scapula is retracted creating a tight base of support, and feet are planted in favor of leg drive. The pressure or force on joints is dependent on where the path of the force vector lies. The path of the force vector is highly dependent on the position of your hands on the barbell. When the hands are held out wider and the force vectors go straight through the elbow, like shown here, it will be a chest-dominant exercise due to the moment arm from the shoulder axes. The triceps will simply work to keep the forearm upright as there is no moment arm from the elbow. If you narrow your grip, a small moment arm is created between the elbow and the force vector. This causes flexion at the elbow and requires the activation of the extensor muscles in the arm, aka the triceps. This will be the ideal form as the goal is to have the chest, shoulders, and triceps all working together in unison to avoid injury and increase strength.